Hello, theme park enthusiasts, and welcome back to Planet Coaster and Appleford Amusement Park. In this episode, I'm going to be doing something rather unique here. It is again something that's not technically usable by the guests, but it is something that I felt like this park especially would need. So as you can see here, what I've done is I've gone onto the workshop and I've gotten different carnival style games from the workshop. And right now what I'm doing is I'm sort of organizing them, finding which of the games I want, and then deleting the parts that I don't need, or just deleting them entirely if I don't feel like I need them. So what we're going to do is put in basically what I'm calling the Midway Games over here, next to the Wild Mouse coaster. Once again, it's not something that the guests will actually be able to interact with, but I will show you how I make it where it is, in a way, usable. And it's basically something that I want to have there so that the guests can enjoy it, but it gives a feel to the overall park that I think is necessary. Especially the older parks like this definitely would have a decent amount of game stalls, and what I want with this park is that you have the primary rampway or the walkway that comes down past the carousel and past the swings towards the wooden coaster, which is sort of the visual feature of the park. And as you're going past it, you're going to walk past on this side all these Midway games where they try to make your money go away. And then on the other side, probably I'll say in the next episode, we'll be putting in something else that also is all about making money for the park. So here what I'm doing is I didn't want individual game stalls. This isn't going to be a park like that where you're going to have the game stalls sort of on the pathways and such. I do love the design of these game stalls. I do apologize for the fact that I didn't really look at who made each of these game stalls. But if you see one that you made, definitely post in the comments that you did and take credit for it, because I do appreciate the great work that these people have done here. It's one of those, what I'm doing here is I'm taking the actual games themselves, adjusting them slightly, and I'm basically planning on making them into one large building here. So I've got to get them lined up, I've got to get them approximately the same height, and I've got to go ahead and start taking away the walls and stuff that make each one different from the next, because those are not going to be staying. Now, as I said, this is just something I wanted to add in for realism. I know, like, when I've gone to SeaWorld, for example, they have an area where they have multiple different game stalls. They aren't combined into one building, but they do have that feel, and it just gives an ambiance to the park. You have the people who are working the game stall barking out different slogans and such, which just adds to the atmosphere. You'll have noises coming as people win, all these kind of things. And for me, it's almost more about the feel that the game stall gives to the park than anything else. And that's something I want here. Same thing with Western Playland in El Paso, near where I live. They have game stalls in the park. Theirs are also sort of put into one building along one of the walkways. I did my best to sort of show that in my creation of Western Playland, so if you want, you can go back and look at that series that I did on Planet Coaster. But yeah, it's one of those that, like I said, I really feel it is something necessary for a park, and it is actually a really good moneymaker for a lot of parks as well, because really the merchandise that they have in these games, the stuffed animals and everything of that nature, they probably get for fairly inexpensive, and yet they're able to go ahead and charge a lot more in order to have your attempt at winning these things. And then when you do end up losing and such, they make that profit. So that is a good thing for the park overall, but as I said, my biggest intent with it isn't even the money. Personally, if this was my park, the whole thing I would hope for is that it would break even. As long as the game stall sort of broke even, then I'd be happy, because really what I'd want out of it is to add to the ambiance of the park. I want it to have that feel, and particularly with this park being sort of an older fashioned park, I definitely wanted it to have that feel of having the games and such to it. So as you can see here, I'm starting to combine different buildings together. I'm trying to make the colors work together. And I'm trying to get it so that that way the prizes that are hanging from them do fit where they should in the game, but at the same time, they are still believable that it could be one building. And as I said, most of these are different people's creations entirely. I didn't just, find one person's stuff and say, ooh, I like that, and go with it. I really combined things from a lot of different people. So with that, I did have to try to make them sort of work in size and such with one another. But as I said, I really do appreciate the work that these different people did. I felt like, now these are not all the games that are on the workshop, but I really felt like these gave a wide variety to what I was doing, and they really brought to life my vision for this Midway Games area. So as I said, a lot of this today is just about making adjustments. I am no way am going to say, oh, I made this Midway game area, because the reality is I didn't. Somebody else took the time to build each one of these games, and I'm just borrowing them or using them in my own park. It's one of the things that I think is actually a huge selling feature of Planet Coaster. Yes, it is great to go ahead and build your own park, and especially build your own coasters and such. I think that this game does a great job on allowing you to be creative that way, unlike a game that I just made an announcement a couple days ago that I am stepping away from in Park Beyond. This game really does give you that creativity that Park Beyond had said would be there, but just it sort of fell flat. But with that, I feel like there's also the fact that you could spend years pretty much on one park if you really wanted to, and I don't want to do that. I do want to make the park exactly what I have a vision for with it, and I do want it to be something that's incredibly enjoyable for the guests. But I want to go ahead and sort of get this park completed and move on to my next one as well. As I said, I've already got ideas for what I want to do for my next park, and it's one of those I'm almost anxious already to get onto that park. But that does mean I'm going to finish this park first, and I am not going to let the quality of this park suffer at all just because I'm excited to get onto that next park. So don't worry about that. This park, I'm not going to put a complete badge on until I feel that it really is done in the way that I want it to be done. And there's still quite a bit to come with this park. I have some videos already recorded that I'm going to be going ahead and putting onto the channel over the following weeks. And then I still, even after those videos, have quite a bit that I still plan on adding. I know there's a couple more rides at least that I want to add in. And then the final one is going to be really a video I'm guessing a lot of people won't find that entertaining, but I'm going to be doing sort of the decoration of the park. I'm going to go ahead and put in the plants and everything of that nature. Now, I have sort of felt like I've learned from this particular series. When it comes to the next series, I do plan on doing an entire area at one time, and that includes planting and everything else. Because I feel like I made a mistake with that in this particular video, or in this particular series, where I'm leaving all of the decoration and such to the end, and it just makes it really a hassle. And as I said, I don't think it's going to be something that people are that interested or entertained by. So I think what I'll probably do in the next series will be to go ahead and do planting around a ride or the particular area whenever I do that particular ride. But for this one, we're going to continue with the way we're doing things. This middle area there, as you can see, like with the swings and stuff, for example, there's going to be a lot added to that area. There's going to be a lot of planter beds and everything like that, because I really want the greenery to be very beautiful in this area. And we can't forget about over by the haunted house, where we're going to have the entire garden area. That's going to be a huge to-do, but at the same time, it'll be worth doing. So here you can see, basically, I'm really struggling with getting these pieces to sort of work together. It is one thing that just seems to happen sometimes in Planet Coaster. Even though you're using things on a grid, the grid for some reason doesn't seem to always want to line up properly. So this building is actually probably, I believe, like 4 buildings or 5 buildings put together here. And sort of decided I wanted to look at doing a different color perhaps for this building. And I'm playing around with different color and different sizes to it, because I want it to be something that's a showcase, but at the same time something that isn't taking away from like the roller coaster and such. Because as I said, my point in this park, as you can see it there in the background right there, is that I want the people to come into this park, and the first thing that really catches their eyes is the monster there, that giant wooden roller coaster that I built at the beginning of this series. That is the focal point of the park. I've said from the beginning, and I do continue to say it, that there will be nothing else that's going into this park that's going to sort of take up the eye line or dwarf that coaster. It's one of those that I feel like that is a decision that the people who own this park would have made. They're going to make a park that's going to be just showing off their heritage through that coaster, and they'll never put in something that's going to take away from that. Yes, there will be other rides like the Big Wheel and stuff that also take up part of the skyline, but they're not going to dwarf the monster itself. So here you can see I'm sort of getting the colors the way I want, and I'm working on the one building that is most of the building by itself. Then I have to go through and put in the different pieces that sort of fit together to make this work for the rest of the building. As I said, it's a tedious process. I wish that it had come together a little bit cleaner than it did, but it is one of those things in Planet Coaster that we just have to deal with at points in time. And you know, it's part of the challenge, and it's part of being proud of what you do create in this game in the end. And I am proud of this building in the end, because it really does do what I had wanted it to, which was, as I said, be this very themed game stall area that I felt like really highlights sort of the feel of the place overall. So here I'm just taking the signs that people made for the different games, changing the colors on them to fit with the gold and purple theme of the park overall, and then going ahead and moving them to the front of my newly created building. Must have stepped away here for a moment, not exactly sure why. There we go. To give you some perspective on this, though, I can say that the video you're watching is going to be about 36 minutes in length, but to actually create this game stall took me probably a good, I want to say 3 days. And once again, that is taking into consideration the fact that I did not make the games themselves. Other people went ahead and created the stuffed animals that are in there, everything of that nature. So all I had to do was sort of redesign it to be a single building like I wanted it to be. Now here I'm just putting names on, and sort of some of the rides had different signs that were unique to whoever created those, not rides, but games had certain signs that the creator of the game had made. And once again, I want everything to sort of be uniform here because it is all part of the same building. And so that's what I'm doing here, is just changing up the signs to all be the same type, and then pushing those signs into the building that's now been created. But as I was saying, even using stuff from the workshop, it really does take a while to bring a vision to life in this game, and that's not at all a bad thing. I will say, most likely, this game will be the game that I have spent more hours in on Steam than any other game, period. And I mean, I do play a lot of Dead by Daylight, as you can see on my channel, but Dead by Daylight probably does not even come close to rivaling the number of hours I put in on this game. There is a difference, though, to it for me. Dead by Daylight I do enjoy, but there are definitely times where it becomes stressful because it is a competitive type of game. This never really is stressful. Yes, there is the issues of trying to line things up exactly like I am right now, but that's not stress. That's still just enjoying the game itself, and is something fun to do. So it's one of those that I don't mind putting in the time on the game. As I said, most likely this game is going to be well ahead of any other game on the channel as far as the number of hours I've spent on it. The only reason that might not be true is if Frontier were to announce at a point that they're bringing out Planet Coaster 2. Because really, I love this game, but there are those things that I would change about this game. One of the biggest things would be, I'd love the new, more modern rides that aren't in this particular game. Personally, what I think Frontier could do, and I mean, it's one of those, if they were watching, I'd love for them to take into consideration, is a lot like what Behavior does with Dead by Daylight. Instead of having to get to the point where it's like, oh, we're going to release a second game, such as Planet Coaster 2, go ahead and just release quarterly or even yearly updates. Charge us for those updates. I don't have any problem whatsoever with that, and I'd be more than happy to pay for those updates, just like I have paid for the DLC for this game. I own all the different DLCs so that I can have all the different rides on here, and as I said, I'd be more than happy to do that in the future as well. Go ahead and give us updates that update the graphics or tweak any of the issues, like the fact that buildings don't always align and stuff on the game. But then, as I said, make your money by just adding content to the game. I personally would like that better than a Planet Coaster 2 for the reason that we've already put so much time with a lot of us into this particular game that I'd rather go ahead and just have what I already have created instead of having to start over from scratch. Now, that being said, if they announce a Planet Coaster 2, I'm incredibly excited for that as well. I'm not going to say no to it because I do like what Frontier does, and all the games I have from Frontier have been good quality. I haven't had the bugs and glitches in them that I have with certain other games. So I would definitely buy the other game when they release it. As I said, it's just one of those that I think it would be just better for the community and for those of us who really enjoy Planet Coaster to just be able to continue with what we're doing and just have more add-ons to it. Modernize the thing by putting in new rides that have come out since this. Give us more unique rides that aren't in the packs that we already have, such as perhaps one that I keep saying that I liked, which was one of the few things I really liked about Park Beyond, is I would love for a Tagada to be in the game. I think that's a great ride. It's not one that's in the United States, but it is a very popular ride from what I've seen over in England, and that would be a ride I would love to be able to put into a park. I'd have to sort of storyline it as to how it fit into the park if this park is supposedly in the United States, but I would do that as the challenge arose. And so, like I said, I think that would be a great way for Frontier to go in the future. I think it would be better because, as I said, then we get to continue to use all the content we've already purchased, but at the same time, we'd also go ahead and get the new stuff. And Frontier would also be making the money that they're needing to make to stay in business as a company. Everybody would win, I feel, and I think it would just be better overall. But that's sort of my stump speech or talk for the day, I guess. Let's get back to what's going on actually in this episode. So as you can see here, I'm still struggling with the alignment of the walls a little bit here. I went ahead and added in both the top roof to the place as well as sort of a faux roof to the place. So that way when the people are in the stalls, there is a roof that they see, but there's this empty space in between it and the actual roof. Now that I've got the building sort of completed, I'm moving it up to the pathway here because I do have an intention of what I want to do as far as to make it look like people are using this location. And you'll see that here shortly. Now, this is something I did want to comment on also because it's something that I'm doing in this series, and it's definitely something I intend to do in future series as well. I know there are some incredibly wonderful creators out there in Planet Coaster who do ultra-realistic type things in their parks. While I want my park to have a realism to it, I am going to also keep in mind the fact that this game does have one major issue, which is if you put too many details into a park, it starts to lag, and you have to lower your number of guests and all kinds of things like that. With that in mind, I am not going to put in things in areas where people are not going to see them. So, for example, if I put in an office, I may say, this is the office for the park. But all I'm going to do is put the outside of the building together. You're not going to have an interior to it, because the fact is, A, it's never going to be used, and more importantly for me, B, it's never going to be seen. I wanted to say that in this video because of the fact that what I'm doing here technically will never be used by the guests. As we can see, I just went ahead and created the Midway Games sign that we're going to put onto the building. I've talked about those signs before, so I didn't really need to explain it again here. But as I said, in this building especially, we have that empty space between the faux roof and the top roof. Now, I could have gone ahead and put in lighting or electrics or anything else that would really be in a building like this in that roof area. But the fact of the matter is, that would take up piece count, and it would never be actually a used thing in the game. So, and by used, I'm not just talking about by the guest, I'm also talking about by the viewers. I do fully intend to put this park onto the workshop when I'm done with it, and I want it to be something where the people who play it can enjoy it. And not everybody has a top-of-the-line PC, so the more I put into the park, the less people might be able to enjoy it because they don't have a PC that'll be able to run it. So I am keeping that in mind. For this building, the way I look at it is that, just a second here. I did suddenly realize that I completely screwed up here, and for some reason, I had this other game over there that I had wanted to add in that I never had. So that's what I'm doing here is I suddenly realized, oh shoot, there's another game over here, and suddenly had to add it in even though most of my building was already constructed. So this is definitely one of those last minute additions to the place, but we'll get it put in there. But back to what I was saying, the areas of the game that I'm focused on here, as far as the Midway Games, are areas that the viewer or the person who downloads my game from the workshop will be able to see. They're areas that they can look into, and they could see the different game stalls and such, and they will see and have it add to their experience of playing in the park. So I wanted to keep that true in a way. I wanted to have it where everything you could see is there, so that it's very realistic. Now with that being said, these other parts of it aren't going to be like the area of the between the two roofs is something that a game player is never going to really see. It's not something that they would ever use, and so there's no real purpose to it. And with that in mind, I don't see a real reason to go ahead and put that in and just waste piece count on it. So that is something, as I said, in this series and in future series I plan on doing, is I'm only going to put in the things that are actually going to be used by the person playing the game. Not just by the characters, but by the person playing the game. So, with that in mind, as I said, this building is functional in a way, and you will see how I make it functional here in a little bit. But, additionally, there's going to be dead space to it that you would just have to imagine. You know, there's that upper area there. There would be air conditioning units probably in it to cool the area. There'd be electrics. You'd have your wiring run. All these different kinds of things. I'm going with the assumption that the electrics and stuff for this park are actually run through the ground, so that way they don't take away from the actual view of the park. And once again, it's one of those, do I want my park to be realistic? Yes. But I also do want it to be practical, not only for the guests, but for the person playing with my park. So with that in mind, there are going to be those points where you have to sort of suspend belief a little bit or be a little bit creative in your thought processes. And I'll try to help with that by saying, you know, this is how this is supposed to work, at least as far as I've thought about it. But with all that being said, we're getting close to the end on this video here. Basically, I'm just struggling with this wall here some, so we're going to get that set up. And then once we get that set up, we'll go ahead and most likely we have to do the flooring to sort of make it coherent for all the different pieces. And then much like I did with the pedal boats area, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and put in a viewpoint or a couple of different viewpoints to make it an interesting place for the guests, so that way they go ahead and are looking in and such. They won't be able to actually use the games, but as I said, it will be something where the guests won't just walk past it and it's never used type of thing. It will be a usable place. Here, because of the fact that I just added onto the building, I have to move this sign over a little bit. So we get that, get it sort of centered on the building. Now this building is very blocky overall, and that's actually exactly how I want it to be. This particular building is the type that, yes, they would decorate the outside of it some, but the fact of the matter is they would leave it as sort of a squared off building. Once again, this is an earlier park. I'm thinking, you know, the park probably started in the early 1900s. So they're not going to do a lot of architectural detail that would cost extra money that they didn't have to. It's a building, it works, it's perfectly fine. So it's going to be sort of squared off. In my next series, which is going to be a very, very different style park in my mind, the buildings are going to be much different and much more diverse in the way they look. But for this, really, as I said, my sort of goal here is I want to create a park that gives the feel that it is old, but at the same time, it's well looked after and well loved. So it's one of those that, yes, it's, you know, it's showing its age by the style of the buildings and such, but it's one that it also is freshly painted on a yearly basis. Any of the wood that has peeled or rotted has been replaced, and everything is taken care of nicely in that way. And that was really important to me. The other thing for this park, lights are an enormous thing, because once again, it is that old-fashioned style park, and I really want to keep that sort of theme going through it, because as I said, I think that this kind of park would have these different kind of lights, and it would really be beautiful at night for a park like this, that just everything would sort of come to life and be very lively and bright and pretty. And so that was, as I said, something I really wanted to do here. These fairy lights take forever to fiddle with because they never seem to go in the lines or on the grid like they're supposed to. You are constantly having to adjust with them and such. But the thing is, they look so good in the end. Same as like the monster. The monster there, doing the lighting on that probably took me several weeks' time and probably gave me some gray hair out of it. But you know what? It was so worth it in my opinion in the end because I love the way that it looks. So, same thing here. Each time I get to the lighting phase on one of these buildings or rides, I just sort of sigh, and a lot of time I'll go eat dinner or something like that, because it's just one of those that's like, I really don't want to do it. It hurts to do it, but at the same time, it's worth it in the end, and I know that. I will say in the next park, if I do fairy lighting at all, it's going to be in very small spaces. It is not going to be on every single thing like this, as I will probably lose my mind if I did that. Come to think of it, I'm thinking about the fact that one of the rides I still plan on putting in this park, I'm gonna most likely do fairy lights on, and it may be somewhat on the scale to do fairy lights on it as it was for the monster. That's one of those I'm gonna now have to think about for a little bit, because that's gonna be a serious question of if I want to push it that much. But we'll have to see. As I said, I really do like the way the fairy lights come out looking in the end. But as you can see here, even copying and pasting them, they don't line up perfectly, so there's a ton of adjustment that you have to do with them. It's a lot of fiddling, but at the end of the day, it is worth it. And you might say, why am I putting them on the back of the building? Because the back of the building isn't seen by the guests on that main pathway. The fact is, though, there are going to be rides that are on this other side here. There's already the Wilder Mouse coaster there, and there are going to be other things that I already have planned in my mind that are going to be over in this area. And with that in mind, the back of the building has to look as good as the front of the building. Actually, looking at it now, I'm almost already toying with the idea I might bring the sign for the building also to the back here, so that way it's advertising for people who are on those rides on this back side. Because, as I said, I think that is an important thing. It really does need to be visually appealing, because places like this, that is one of their huge selling features. People are going to be drawn in by those different bright lights and the pretty look of the buildings. I think here I sort of gave up for a minute and went and got a soda, because yeah, as I said, it is an enormous amount of work to get these fairy lights in on the building. And I know I'm not even close to done yet, but it is something that, as I said, I have decided is worthwhile for this particular park. Probably never again, but for this park, I'm doing it. And you can see here that just even when you sort of flip them around, and they should work perfectly fine, they should align to a grid almost, they don't. For some reason, they'll be off flying in space, everything of that nature. It's, as I said, I could say it's a problem in the game, but it's one of those that the game I don't think ever intended for somebody to use them the way that I am here. So really, it is sort of suffering I have brought on myself. So now we're looking at lighting overall more. I need to worry about the look of each of the game stalls. Again, making them sort of uniform in nature. So we have a lot of fairy lights in some of the roofs here, which I do like, but I don't have them in every roof. So what I end up doing here is I go ahead and take this building over to sort of see how it works. Oh, and I decided to change out one of the games here. I think that I had a game that was repeating. I didn't like that, so just a quick switch here, just to have something that again fits but gives a different option as far as the games go. But here, as I said, I'm sort of trying to figure out how this works. So there I find that the light was on the ground there, was creating one of the lights. As you can see here, just deleting these different stuffed animals, the amount of pieces that are in each stuffed animal is impressive. The work these people do on the workshop is amazing. I give them full credit for what they do. But here what I'm basically doing is I'm taking that roof and just sliding it into place because it gives me the lighting that I want. Because once again, this is a uniform location. All of these stalls should have been the exact same when they were put in, and so with that, I need them to all fit together. I think at this point I wasn't understanding why these lights weren't making these areas bright. I don't think I had realized that there had been a light in the floor that had actually upped the lighting, and when I was deleting I just had quickly deleted and hadn't realized that that was a thing. So here I want in this stall to put in some different colored lights just to make it unique and different. But again, and I'm looking at here and couldn't realize, then I realized, oh, they probably had a light in the floor. And I put the light in the floor, worked perfectly fine. Get that all lit up, and then we'll sink these lights into the floor just slightly. Same thing for this stall here. Putting in some additional lights in the ceiling that are supposedly what makes the lighting work, but really are not. It's one thing that's sort of unique in this game is that some of the lighting that you expect to be what's casting the light isn't. Jumped out of the game there for a second. Was checking evidently on my uploads of different games that I was putting up at the time. Alright, so here we are now. We're going to go ahead and put in sort of a uniform floor. I'm just sort of seeing which floor it is that I like the best, and basically ensuring that I have it at the highest point of any of the stalls. So that way it's going to be nice and uniform with particular stalls. And again, just adjusting those stalls as need be, just to make sure that it works. And we'll go ahead and select the floors and just pull them on over. And that's where this is not a place that's intended to look like basically it's sort of the feel I want is that almost like you're at a boardwalk on some pier somewhere, but at the same time I recognize the fact that there's not going to be that pier because there's not going to be that water in this area here. But as I said, I wanted that sort of feel. It's the kind of thing that I think a park of this age might have done. Even if they weren't near a lake or an ocean, they would still want that sort of beachy feel to what they were doing. Basically trying to line it up properly. And just sinking these in ever so slightly so that they fit. So now all of the floors do actually work as they're supposed to. And I decided I wanted to go ahead and run these beams up all the way to the top just to give another piece of architectural interest to the building overall. So I realized already what that's going to cause here in the building, but it was one that was worth it to me because I did like this look that it was giving. Otherwise, I felt it was a little bit plain, and I didn't like that. So, just making it a little bit bigger there. And then I go ahead and move the sign slightly, so that way it looks centered in between those different pieces. The pieces aren't exactly centered because of the fact that they can't be with the stalls being different sizes. But it still works. Then I'm moving these lights over, so that way each of the new pillars that I put in now has the lights on them. It's that little bit extra work, but it makes the thing look nice overall. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and click that like button. If you've not already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and I hope to see you all again for more Planet Coaster.